What's up, everybody? It's Corey, host of the Grease Pole Podcast, back with another edition of the Performance Tiers. We're current now. It feels fucking good. So, week 14, up the turnpike against the Giants, 3-game road trip. And this wasn't really much of a road trip, obviously, just going from Philly to Jersey up 95. So, NFC East rivals, though. And these games are always tough, you think. But goddamn, the Birds proved it wrong this time, right? You always think going into the division games, this is going to be tough, close game, yada yada. Not the case this time, okay? Just when you think that the Tennessee game was the most complete game of the season, then this game happens, okay? And there was one of the big things that got fixed was the false starts penalties, pre-snaps coming into the Giants game. There's not a whole lot of that Week 14 against the Giants at MetLife. So, without further ado, let's get into the tiers and who's where, see how they shake out for the game against the Giants, the big win to give the Birds their 12th win on the year. And if you need a reference point to the following tiers and why they are named what they are, what they represent, click the link above, and that will take you to the introduction to the performance tiers. That'll give you the lay of the land if you want to know what lies ahead. So, each and every week, we start greatest Eagle of all time, in my opinion, and many other Eagles fans' opinions. Weapon X, the Brian Dawkins tier. And look, where else? Jalen Hurts, right? And it's gotten to the point where I honestly can't remember an edition of the performance tiers where QB1 wasn't mentioned in the Dawkins tier. And look, Hurts in the offense have scored 30-plus points in the last 3 games, and it feels like if you blink, you miss something with this offense. And Hurts himself continues to start games hot. He went 17 for 24 for 171 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half in this game. That first drive in particular was a fucking masterpiece. They went 84 yards in 14 plays. Hurts was an architect. He completed 9 of 10 passes to 7 different people. 7. With Dallas Goedert out. Fucking crazy. He added 10 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown as well. But it's really been the throws he's been making that have continued to stand out game after game. He's throwing the ball with anticipation. He's putting the ball in tight windows. Jalen Hurts is the franchise quarterback of this team going forward without question. He's proven everybody wrong, including myself, and he's absolutely fucking earned it. Mazel tov to QB1. Miles Sanders. And this was kind of cool in a way, and it happens twice a year when Saquon Barkley isn't injured, but it was a Penn State running back day with Saquon Barkley against his heir in the Nittany Lion backfield, who had another impressive outing with 2 touchdowns on the day to give him 10 rushing touchdowns on the year, double digits for 26. And Sanders became the first Eagles running back to break 1,000 yards since LaShawn McCoy in 2014, even gave him homage with a shady bounce touchdown celebration. Sanders in the final year of his rookie contract, and there's the angle where, dudes that, are in a contract year, they always ball out, they want that money. Sanders has had this in him from day one. He just needed consistent opportunity, and Sirianni and Shane Steichen have done exactly that this year. We've always pointed out on the pod how efficient Sanders is, and this game was no different. 17 carries, 144 yards, and 2 touchdowns with an 8.5 average yards per carry. What to do with Sanders and the running back position is going to be interesting to watch how Howie Roseman handles in the upcoming offseason, but Sanders has always been incredibly valuable to the Eagles, and it's nice to see that finally be acknowledged on a regular basis, week in and week out, as he makes the Dawkins tier this week. Brandon Graham as well, and what a year it's been for the 2010 first-round pick, who recently was named the Eagles nominee for the Walter Payton Man of the Year award. BG's been killing it on the field as well. And, this could be the best year of his career at 34 years old and coming off a torn ACL. He had 3 sacks on the day, which brings his total to 8.5 on the year, and made himself even more comfortable in that Giants backfield with 3 tackles for a loss. And, we talked about it a couple weeks ago when Jason Kelce broke the offensive line, games played record for the franchise. And much like Kelce, BG's status as an Eagles legend is on lock. Obviously, he had the strip sack on Tom Brady to secure Super Bowl 52, but he's grown into a consistent player that's been able to produce at a premium position and a leader in the locker room, and he's just a great dude. And you love to see him getting the respect he deserves. You know, even more so in a minor fashion this week as a member of the Dawkins tier, which moves us to our guy, Commonwealth Charlottesville represent, host of the Green Light Pod, Chris Long tier. And here you'll find Josh Sweat and Hassan Reddick. And these two dudes have been awesome. They set the tone early for the defense, each with a sack. And with this being the second straight week, that Jonathan Gannon's defense has been stifling, even without creating turnovers. Josh Sweat's one of Howie Roseman's best draft picks, in my opinion. And Hassan Reddick was a fucking outstanding pickup by the Eagles GM. And Howie's completely reshaped and retooled this defense, and his efforts have been reflected on the field. Reddick does so fucking much for this defense. And if you look back at the Super Bowl year, it was the trenches that finally brought the Lombardi into all of our lives, right? This defensive line in the rotation at Gannon's disposal is better than the one we had in 2017. Avonte Maddox returned in this game, which is great, but we're still dealing with some injuries in the secondary, which goes back to Howie's focus on depth across the board on defense. But with, the back end still less than 100% right now going into even the Chicago game, this rotation of defensive linemen, their ability to get after the quarterback is going to be absolutely crucial to the continued success of this defense as we approach the playoff push. Also wanted to mention Devontae Smith's toughness. And if you've been a listener of the pod since before we ventured here to YouTube, you're aware that I was among the group of people that were concerned with Devontae Smith's size or lack thereof and how he'd be able to hold up in the league long term. And look, dude may be small, but goddamn, his mental makes up for it. And credit Sirianni for deciding to go for it on a 4th and 7 from the Giants' 41-yard line where Jalen Hurts just drops a dime to Devontae with Julian Love closing in to take Smith's head off. Hurts with the perfect ball placement put it where only Devontae could catch it, and he made the catch without breaking stride, not even concerned with what would have been a huge hit. It was a touchdown, and while it only made the game 14-0, in favor of the Birds, that really was the exclamation point on the game, despite it being relatively early on. Nelson Aguilar tier. And not a whole lot to say this week. Kayvon Wallace. All right, Jalen Mills 2.0 back there. Just stop fucking sucking and be better, okay? Which brings us to the Chip Kelly tier. The Cheeks de la Cheeks, the worst of the worst every week. Not a reflection on the dude, just the incident, the Reed Blankenship injury. And Blankenship's been a pod favorite since the preseason. And in the absence of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Blankenship's been money. He went down with a knee injury midway through the second quarter and was carted off, which is never a good sign, and replaced by the aforementioned Kayvon Wallace. What's crazy is, when we caught up on the backlog of these videos that had built up, we posted the tiers for the Tennessee game late Friday night, this past Friday night. And when I woke up Saturday morning, a viewer, shout out to Philip, had commented that he's got complete faith in Blankenship until proven otherwise. And I absolutely agree with that. And I even said that I feel far more confident in Blankenship than Wallace, hence the reason why he became a sentimental favorite of ours back in August. And then Sunday afternoon, this happens. And you can't help but feel for the guy. An undrafted free agent gets an opportunity not only to play, but to start and to do so on a team that's got a serious chance of going somewhere. And then he goes down with an injury. Now, I liked the Kayvon Wallace pick at the time. 4th rounder in 2020 that started for that Brent Venables defense at Clemson. But let's face it, he's struggled at the NFL level and he's been relegated to special teams for a reason. Even in his 3rd season in the NFL on the roster, he's a liability on the back end, okay? And we'll see what happens. But if I'm Howie with the Jordan Davis injury, you went out and got Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph. Malcolm Jenkins has hinted at a willingness to come back. former Eagle Anthony Harris was recently cut by Denver. I'd at least do my due diligence and make a phone call, because from what we've seen, I'd rather not fucking rely on Kayvon Wallace. So depending on how serious this knee injury is for Reed Blankenship, if I'm Howie, I'm picking up the phone, because I do not want Kayvon Wallace on the back end, and depending on what happens with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, hopefully he'll be right by the playoffs, but you don't want 42 back there in the playoffs. You absolutely don't. It's an easy way to get fucking exposed. Blankenship had been killing it. He goes down, and that's why that injury makes up the Chip Kelly tier this week, because it fucking blows. Next game at Chicago, right? And, as we said, the Birds traveled up the turnpike and wrecked the Giants to clinch a playoff spot and look ahead to the lowly Chicago Bears, who's coming off their bye. And at this point, I think the main thing is just hoping that the injured guys are good to go for the playoffs, and furthermore, ensuring that Jalen Hurts doesn't find himself added to that list. And the reality is, at this point in the season, no team is absolutely 100% healthy, okay? But despite the injuries to Dallas Goedert, who thankfully returned to practice this week, you still got Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Reed Blankenship. The team still managed to beat the shit out of the Titans and the Giants in back-to-back weeks. And say what you want, but these are teams that are fighting for playoff spots. And when you're in the driver's seat for the first round bye, the opponent you're likely going to face in the divisional round will be tougher than either of them. And you'll have an extra week for any injured guys to get right, but then you've got that classic rust versus rest debate that Coach Sirianni will have to navigate. And ultimately, these are all issues that you want to have. These are good problems to have, but it's shit that you have to begin to anticipate as you control your own destiny with the regular season coming to a close. Bottom line. And this is why Sirianni's the man, why he gets paid the big bucks, and it's just, that's part of the gig. So 12-1 going to Soldier Field this week, and one of the stadiums left that doesn't have a corporate sponsor, at least that I'm aware of. Could have that wrong. If I do, I'm sure somebody will let me know in the comments section, which is where I'd like you to chime in as well with your thoughts on the victory against the Giants, your thoughts on the upcoming game against Chicago, and all things Eagles. That's what the comment section is used for. Feel free to utilize it with whatever the fuck is on your mind. Also, hit that subscribe button if you want more Eagles content flooded in your timeline in the middle of your life. And that's what we're here for, especially as the playoff push comes, the NFL draft's coming, a lot of original shit coming your way. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, and we will see you back here next week for the Week 15 edition of the Performance Tiers, and Monday for the flagship, the podcast, each and every week on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, also simulcast here on YouTube as well. Hit the subscribe button. We'll see you back here. As always, go Birds.